Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, July 18th, 2022. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going this week?
Very good. Thank you, Graham.
So it's been super hot here. I don't know if you're getting the same kind of weather, but in Paris, it has been, really hot. Not too humid, so it's tolerable, but definitely full on summer now here.
We're having a great spell of weather, no doubt.
Yeah. So what's going on in MBA land? I mean, I feel like we finally passed the threshold and are 100% pretty much into this next cycle with people applying and essay topics coming out. I haven't seen a ton of, activity on waitlist movement, which might mean we're really hitting the end of that. But I don't know what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And I mean, obviously, well, not obviously, but we are recording the podcast a couple of days sooner than we usually do.
Yeah.
So whether there's a little bit of activity towards the end of this week before the podcast is published, it's still possible, Graham. So if folks are on a wait list, there's a reason why they're still on a wait list.
Yeah.
Schools will close out the wait lists once they know their incoming class. And they don't really know that until folks arrive on campus.
Yeah.
So, there'll always be a little bit until folks actually arrive for the preterm or whatever it is,
right,
for their first sort of MBA experience.
Yeah, and I think one thing that some of our listeners may not know is that, the preterms often start in August or even late July, where you're kind of getting settled into your new environs and getting, particularly if you're an international student, they often have you arrive even earlier. And there's all kinds of, August kind of orientation things and classes you take and everything to get ramped up. So, yeah, there could be some movement when those dates hit if people don't show for their spot. Other than that, Alex, I've been waiting all week to ask you, we have these fun questions that we've been asking each other to try to allow our listeners to get to know us a little bit better. And so these kind of real humans questions that we usually reserve for admissions directors. And so are you ready for your questions this week? Because I have 4 that I prepared, and I know I sent them your way.
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. So what is your biggest regret?
Yeah, biggest regret, you can always say, well, I don't really regret anything because any missteps I learned from. And there's certainly plenty of things that fall into that category. But there was an opportunity I had when I worked at the Wharton School to go on a leadership course, when they do those out-of-bound leadership courses, Graham.
Yeah.
And the one, they used to send students down to the Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And I bailed on doing that. And I always thought, well, that was actually silly. What a terrific experience that would have been.
Yeah. Wow. That's not a continent that everyone gets to put their feet on, so. All right. So that's your biggest regret. What about, is there one thing you would change about how you were raised? And I hope, no parents are listening or anything. Your mom might be.
Yeah. I mean, I was privately schooled, educated, and I would change that. And I know lots of folks have really good experience at boarding schools. Mm-hmm. I didn't really like it, quite honestly, so I don't think it was the greatest environment for me. And as a piece of that was, you got a bunch of mates where you live, and then you're shipped off to a boarding school somewhere else. So there's a little bit of a disconnect when you're a kid, mm-hmm. sort of who you're growing up with. So, yeah. It would be my very expensive boarding school education, probably.
Okay. This is a little bit more light here, but what is a superpower that you wish you had? And I just want to preface this by saying that so many of the admissions officers that I talk to often say, oh, I wish I could fly or go from one place to another instantly. So maybe I'm hoping you thought about this and maybe you have something else.
I'd quite like to be a mind reader.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a dangerous job. I mean, that's,
Yeah, it would be quite useful, though.
Yes, it would be. Yeah. Would other people know that you have this power? You just kind of keep it to yourself and then just,
I think you can keep it to yourself, but it's very, very, very useful. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then this last one, what schools, if any, rejected you? So I don't know when you applied to university or even when you were thinking about getting an MBA, but were there schools that you looked at that said no, or how did that go for you?
No, there weren't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, when I did my undergrad, I wasn't overly ambitious because, again, my sort of academic record through private education wasn't stellar because I don't think I had a great necessarily experience. Mm-hmm. But anyway, undergrad was fine. And for the MBA, again, I only applied to one school,
Got it.
and I got admitted, and it was really good. But at that piece, you could say, well, you know what? Maybe I didn't aim high enough. And this is a little lesson that we teach when people are looking at their MBA application strategy, right? A good strategy will include a couple of rejects because then you know you aimed high enough.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, my MBA experience was terrific, and it got me to where I am today. So it worked out really well. But you could argue, well, actually, if I'd have targeted a little bit higher, maybe some other opportunities may have come my way. Who knows?
Got it. Okay. So, well, thanks for answering those. I guess I have to answer these same ones next week, so I got to start thinking about this. We'll see how it goes. Over on the website in the past week, we had a chance to sit down, or Lauren on our team sat down with Donna Levinson, who's the Assistant Dean of Admissions over at MIT Sloan. So there's a really nice interview up on the site based on that. And I did want to, we always ask the top business schools to tell us something that like we don't know about what goes on their campus or a strength. And I thought this was interesting. So I'm just going to read a little quote from Donna. She said that, she says, we've been doing a lot of work around impact investing throughout the pandemic and plan to give it more visibility in the next coming year or so. When people think about going to business school for finance, I'm pretty sure MIT isn't at the top of their list, but when they come here, they're always amazed at the work our faculty are doing related to eco-finance. Investing for good has really taken on a life of its own, and this is an area that many of our applicants are passionate about, so I'd love for people to want to learn more about this at MIT Sloan. So kind of an interesting niche that they've kind of carved out there. I had heard about this actually in terms of their strengths in that domain. So kind of cool stuff. I don't know if you thought of MIT for, kind of impact investing or not, but it's interesting.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I do think of MIT as being a good place to learn sort of fundamental finance because it's obviously a very strong sort of quant focus at MIT, or at least that would be a perception, right?
Yeah.
At Sloan. But yeah, no, impact investing, which has got to become more and more important in this sort of world in which we currently live. No, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and then the only other thing that I wanted to call everyone's attention to is that Tuck received a big milestone with their fundraising. They got an anonymous $52 million pledge. So first question, Alex, that wasn't you, was it?
No.
But so someone gave them $52 million. It's actually the largest in the school's history. And I guess it's designated dollars. They're going to use it to create a Dartmouth summit on health, wealth, and sustainability. And I guess whoever gave the money really believes, there was a quote somewhere, I meant to kind of share it with everyone here, but basically someone was, very passionate about students being able to resolve global challenges as seen through this intersecting, roles of like public policy, healthcare, climate change, politics, finance. So yeah, we'll see. That's a big chunk of change heading Tuck's way. So very good news for that school. Pretty cool.
No, brilliant. It sounds a little bit like impact investing.
Yeah, you can see where things are going here.
Yeah. And I assume the anonymous gift is anonymous to us, but not anonymous to Tuck.
Yeah, they must know. Yeah, but it's but the person doesn't want their name out there, which is fine. Other than that, we are in the midst of our essay workshops, and this Wednesday at noon Eastern, I get to sit down and moderate a small panel with admissions folks from Duke, UT Austin, Carnegie Mellon Tepper, London Business School, and INSEAD. I'm really looking forward to this. It's the second in a series of 4 essay workshops that we've been doing for a couple summers now, and they're really popular. I love to see the number of people signing up for these things, and I think part of that comes from the fact that we don't really let the schools just kind of say what they want to say. Like we ask them very specific questions about the essays, and it's in the schools. To the school's credit, I feel like they all have been really great about sharing, I think, really helpful tips. So it's I love the format that we have for these events. Encourage everyone to sign up, and you can do so at bit.ly/CAMBA essays, all one word. So those are fun. And Alex, the week after we've got, Columbia, MIT, NYU, Stanford, and Wharton joining me for one of those. So just more to come, lots of fun. And yeah, I love these.
Yeah, fantastic events. Well done.
The only other news is that very soon we're going to be unveiling, as we kind of we hinted last week, we're going to be unveiling Clear Admit Plus, which is a new service for our for our community members. It is a paid service, but it costs almost nothing, and it allows you to get access to the Admissions Academy, which is a video series that Alex and I have produced together, as well as our ApplyWire data dashboard. The annual subscription comes with some access to our publication, so it's a really good deal. Stay tuned. It's imminent. In fact, probably shortly after this podcast comes out, this will all be available on the site. So, yeah, stay tuned. Alex, anything else from you? We haven't gotten any mail of late, which kind of bums me out, and I haven't seen any new reviews of the show. So, if people are listening and willing, please leave us a review. But Alex, anything on your mind before we dive in?
Is anyone listening?
I think so.
That might be the issue.
Yeah. No, I look at the numbers occasionally. I haven't looked in a little while, but no, people tune in apparently. And actually, I joined a WhatsApp group that someone posted on our website over the past week or so. It was just someone said, hey, fall applicants hang out here. And so I went in and I answered a few questions that people were posing. And in that group, there were a lot of people saying like, wow, love the podcast. And thanks for everything on the website. So I think people are tuning in, Alex. At least I hope.
Excellent.
You can always reach out to Alex and I by writing to info@clearadmit.com. Please write. We love to get your letters, and we read them out over the air if they're appropriate and if you want us to. But it's just nice to hear from folks tuning in. Alex, other than that, I know you spent some time picking out our candidates for this week. So shall we dive into the wiretaps portion?
Let's kick on.
All right. So this is wiretaps candidate number 1. So this entry is an ApplyWire entry we received. The candidate is targeting business school for the fall of 23. They have 5 schools on the target list. The schools are Columbia, Harvard, Kellogg, NYU, and Chicago Booth. This person's been working in nonprofit management, but also as a professional dancer. They're thinking about getting into consulting, maybe with Bain, BCG, or McKinsey after business school. The GPA is a 3.97. And they have yet to take the GMAT. They've taken a couple of practice tests and seem to be scoring, I guess the most recent practice test was at a 710 or so. They've got 6 years of experience, located in Colorado, would love to land in New York. And this is a 28-year-old white male who literally was a professional ballet dancer and now works more in kind of an operations role with a dance company or something, if I remember correctly from the post. So, Alex, I mean, this is an unorthodox candidacy. They've got a lot of outside activities, just a really interesting profile, but also highly non-traditional. Their undergraduate was not in a quantitative subject. I think they placed out of any math that they had to take, they were mentioning. So it's kind of a weaker quantitative profile, very unorthodox work experience, but they're interested in kind of, taking that management experience in nonprofit, heading into consulting, and then going on from there. But what's your take on this? Because this is an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, it is super interesting, right? So they're a professional, or they're a retired professional ballet dancer. So one would speculate that we don't see too many retired professional ballet dancers in the MBA the MBA world.
No.
So past, present, or in the future. So from that perspective, they are going to be the sort of from a diversity standpoint, they're going to add quite a lot in terms of that experience. But I'm going to ask you, Graham, why can this be very favourable to an MBA profile? Why would AdCom get excited that they're a retired professional ballet dancer? Yeah,
so I mean, there are a number of things, but number one is this is like prime catalog material. Like when you're thinking about the view book of a school, they always love to showcase the diversity and the variety of individuals they have in their program. And so on some level, it's really interesting to have someone from the arts who's had experience in management in the arts. I mean, it's not like this person has only been a dancer. Like they've been doing operational stuff with presumably, I think it was a theater company or dance company, or they've had a lot of exposure to that. They've been working, they're an operations manager with like a number of years of experience with an internationally known dance festival. They've even done some sports related events management. So that they've had experience that's relevant to me. It just, unusual.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like this stands out. I mean, it's just having a different voice in the classroom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. On the one hand, that sort of professional ballet dancer profile is so unusual that it will help, show that, the MBA is accessible to very diverse sort of sets of experiences. So that's very good. But they can then marry that with that operations experience. The fact that they've had that sort of 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever it is of operations experience and growth and learning and impact in that regard too is outstanding. And I also think if you're a professional athlete or a professional dancer or a professional artist or whatever it might be, the passion and the commitment and the wherewithal to be very good at what you do, I think also says a lot about your character. And so forth. So all these things sort of conspire together to really help this person, I think, really elevate their profile. Love the fact that their GPA is nearly 4.0, probably not highly quantitative, but again, the fact is that they've done well. They've committed to the 4-year undergraduate experience and done really well at it. And as you say, their extracurriculars and stuff are there. Their goals, I really like their goals because they marry their passion and their interests for the arts with sort of business fundamentals in the long run, in a leadership role, in an arts-related organisation. In the short run, go do some consulting work. It just makes so much sense. This is a potential superstar type candidate. We're waiting for the GMAT. And will the GMAT be the make or break of the candidacy? I mean, at the very top programs, they're going to need to see that quant rigor somewhere in this candidate's profile, whether it's the quant side of the GMAT's going to come in high and therefore mitigate any concern on the quant side, or if they get an overall decent GMAT, the quant's a little bit light, they do MBA Math or HBS Core, that's another route too. And again, doing MBA Math and HBS Core is valuable in two regards. One is it's going to assure the AdCom that they're prepared, but it's also going to help the candidate be prepared, in terms of transitioning to, that first quarter, which might be quite rigorous. So,
Agreed.
Graham, lots to like here.
Yeah, and I did want to say, they mentioned just in terms of the clarity around those goals, like they want to do consulting, but then ultimately head back into, the kind of arts and ideally end up as an executive director at a large performing arts organization. And I think most admissions readers, when they see that, they like that idea of like, wow, a grad from our school is going to go off and be in a very senior role, but for an arts organization, which is a little different, right? So it all makes sense to me. I love the storyline, and I agree that, if they get, they don't need to hit necessarily the average GMAT score, given how non-traditional their candidacy is, but it would be nice to see them get close. It'll certainly make their sort of path to acceptance a lot easier if they end up with a 730 or something on this test with a decent quant score, as you say. So we'll see. I want to wish them the best of luck. And I think, it's just a really interesting profile. And they should be fine. Looking at the breakdowns on their testing on those practice tests, I feel like they're off to a pretty good start. And it wouldn't surprise me if they end up north of 700 with decent, quant percentages and stuff. So that should be good.
If they come back with a 650, what's the story?
I think they have to retake. If they come back with 650, they absolutely have to retake. They could also look at GRE if they're worried about, something, if it's really a kind of quant weakness or something. I would definitely take MBA Math or HBS Core if they start to, fall down on this test. But hopefully that doesn't happen. We'll see, I guess.
But this is the type of candidate that possibly could still have access to the very best programs, even with a test score that's somewhat below average.
Yeah,
I
fair.
would speculate.
Yeah.
But they've got to show that they will be academically ready for a rigorous sort of first quarter from a quant standpoint. So that then gets to the question of, all right, 650, 680, that's kind of where I've hit. So this MBA Math HBS core route becomes much more important and viable.
Yeah, and then the only thing I wanted to mention is, you think about their school list, right? They've got Harvard and Columbia and NYU, which are all Northeast Corridor. They want to land in New York. That's where a lot of performing arts stuff happens. They don't seem to have a desire to be on the West Coast. So it seems like a lot of dance and ballet and other performing arts. There is a big, centering around New York. Obviously, there's also on the West Coast, but it seems like they're focused on the East Coast. Then they also have Kellogg and Chicago on their list. And I actually wondered, and I wrote to them, I said, well, what about schools like Yale or Wharton? Because those are in the Northeast Corridor, good access to New York City. And in the case of Yale, there's a long history of kind of nonprofit management expertise. And I even know I have a friend who's a Yale grad who actually is very senior at a major performing arts organization. So I just wondered, and I wanted them to at least look at some of these programs because I wasn't quite figuring out, again, we always talk about geographic proximity and the benefits of that. So that was just something to think about. Obviously, they might have another storyline, which could be, oh, no, there's a bunch of performing arts organizations in Chicago that I really want to be a part of, and I just failed to mention that in my notes, and so I'd be happy to land in Chicago. If that's the case, then by all means, keep those schools on the list too, right? But just something to think about.
Yeah, they do actually mention Wharton in their comments. So
okay.
We are very high on this profile, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I want to thank them for posting. Let's move on though and talk about Wiretaps candidate number 2. So our second candidate this week is another ApplyWire entry. It's a white male engineer, 26 years old, looking to start in the fall of 23. And the target schools are Tuck, Duke, Michigan, UNC, and UVA Darden. They have been working as an engineer, kind of in the engineering field. They'd love to get into consulting after business school. They've got Bain, BCG, McKinsey on the list, and some others as well. GMAT score is a 710, and that score was achieved after 3 tries. So they're kind of done with the GMAT in their mind. They have a 3.77 undergraduate GPA. They have 5 years of work experience. They're located in the southeast of the U.S., and post-MBA, they're kind of indifferent, they say. They want to land just in the U.S., but no specific region. They mentioned that they grew up in a rural area, went to kind of a state school, way out. This is in the Intermountain West, so they kind of hint in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho. Studied electrical engineering and mathematics. They have that 3.7 GPA. And, they also have, I guess, a master's degree in electrical engineering from a big name university, public university, and they had a 3.7 in that degree as well. And then they've been doing last 5 years as an engineer with a big defense company. And they, again, give us some hints: Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, those kind of places. So I guess they go on. There's a lot of details in their profile, but I'm going to just sort of stop there, Alex, because they have a lot of interesting activities and, clearly a lot of qualifications here, and yet somewhat stereotypical, being kind of a, white male engineer wanting to get into consulting. But what do you make of this candidacy? Because I know you kind of pointed out that the GMAT could be a concern at 710. Are you a little surprised by that score?
Yeah, I'm surprised by the score. I don't know if it's going to be a concern or not. It might be the limiting factor and the reason why they're targeting sort of top 16 versus M7. Top 16 is still outstanding, but, at the end of the day, I would encourage them to also add a couple of M7 programs into the mix. Because again, their work profile looks interesting. I mean, working for Boeing, engineering, they say it's interesting work but not glamorous. I'm not quite sure what that actually means, but if it's interesting work and they can show impact and growth, that's the key in terms of what the outcome is going to be looking at. We like candidates that build stuff, if you're working for Boeing, you're probably building or designing something. So if they can show impact there, I think that would be very good. So I like that. Their academic GPA is very strong. I think, it's electrical engineering. They did double major, including mathematics. I mean, this guy's... I assume we know that. Yeah. Sorry, white male engineer. They're obviously very smart. So I'm not saying that the GMAT's not good. It's 710. It's still very good. It's within range of all top programs. I just thought it was an underperformance relative to their academic profile and the fact that they're an engineer and so on and so forth. But they, like you say, they've taken it 3 times. So let's give up on the GMAT. They're planning to take the GRE actually, which, if they do that, they get it in the 330s, then they've solved that problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if they do it and get in the mid 320s, I mean, I don't think it'll make a whole lot of difference, 710 or 320, 25 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I like their ECs. Maybe their long-term goal could be have a little bit more clarity. Short-term goal in consulting just makes good sense. Again, I think target the first rounds, add 1 or 2 M7s into the mix, and this candidate should, with good execution on the applications, obviously, should have some pretty good options, Graham.
Yeah, I think the 2 things I want to call attention to. So I agree, like everything lines up. The GMAT score is a bit low, but they might be able to squeak through. I also wondered if the reason they have this list of target schools that's more, like you said, more top 16 as opposed to, M7. I just wondered if some of it was based around their desire for a really small, kind of close-knit community. They seem to have this kind of Southeast focus in their school selection. If you think about UNC, Darden, Duke, obviously they also have Tuck and Ross on the list. But I just was wondering, all those programs, the thing I think of when I think of them is, close-knit, relatively small communities, and also, not in big urban centers. I guess, Ann Arbor is a pretty big town, but it's not, we're not talking about New York or Philly or Chicago or something. So I wondered if there were some personal things driving that school selection, or if it was purely based on where they thought they might get some traction.
The only thing I would add to that is top 16 programs are smaller than M7
by nature
programs.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and then
the average class size, with 1 or 2 exceptions, obviously Stanford's an exception to that.
Yeah. So the other thing though that struck me is that they talk about this interest in government and in transportation, telecommunications, and just sort of nonprofit, the intersection of kind of maybe public and private. And they mentioned that for the last couple of years they've been working as a volunteer on a local political campaign for like state attorney, and they're going to do that again this year. And so they have this kind of government angle that drives them. And I can see that, if they're working at a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, they're probably aware of those organizations' relationships with, government. And so I just wanted to stress that to the extent that their candidacy and their kind of long-term goals can weave all this together, which is what they suggest they might do, I think that'll be a real strength and it might help them stand out.
Exactly.
So I think that's a potentially a real win for them. So again, really interesting profile, and I'm glad. It was nice to see that they shared a lot of detail, and I know you had some dialogue with them afterwards. So very cool stuff.
I just hope we see that clarity in that long-term goal.
Agreed.
And that sort of anchors the entire narrative, because I think it can be very promising.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, I want to thank them for sharing their profile. Wish them the best of luck. And now let's get into Wiretap's candidate number 3. So this week's third candidate is a little bit of a curveball in that this candidate it's an ApplyWire entry that you picked, Alex, but she does not intend to matriculate until the fall of 25. This is an Asian American first-gen female. She comes from a low-income background, and she'll be 28 or maybe 29 by the time she matriculates. She is looking currently at like 14 schools. It's really a who's who of the top programs with, Berkeley, Cambridge, Columbia, Tuck, Harvard, LBS, MIT, Kellogg, Stern, Stanford, Booth, Penn, and Yale.
Graham, to cut it short, she has undecided selected.
Yeah,
so
she
let's
doesn't
just
even
say
know. Yeah, it's a big list.
Yeah, which is fine for someone that's targeting in 2 or 3 years' time, right?
Totally.
Or whatever. So that makes a lot of sense.
So currently working as a strategy consulting at a tier 2 firm, which she reveals is Oliver Wyman. Good consulting firm, but it's not MBB or something, but it's a really good consulting firm. And then prior to that, she actually worked as a management consultant for a Big 4 accounting shop. So she's got, I guess about a year now in her current role, and then, a few years at the other. but she has a total of 4 years of experience, and she will need to work, wants to work a little bit more before she applies. And the reason for that is because her employer has actually offered to pay for her MBA I think she needs to stay on another year or two to be eligible for that. And then she needs to return to the employer for 3 years afterwards as a part of in order for them to pay for the MBA. So that's her kind of situation. She mentions that she went to a top 50 undergraduate university. She has a 3.47. She double majored in finance and economics, and she's thinking about taking some additional pre-MBA courses. She has a ton of activities and things. There was a lot to kind of go through here. But even in college, I mean, this is someone who has just traditionally been very active, whether it's been at the Big Four shop she worked at Oliver Wyman now, or at university. So I don't know if you want to get into any of the specifics there, but she was asking us about testing because she hasn't yet taken the GMAT or the GRE, and she's kind of wondering which test to take. Would any one test make her profile stronger? And also, like, what sort of score she should be aiming for in light of that list of target schools, which arguably are really top schools, right? So, yeah, what did you make of her candidacy, Alex, and about these questions about the test?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a work experience profile and an extracurricular profile, we're looking at a very strong potential candidate. Again, as long as she can show the impact and growth through the experiences and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking that the work, that part of the profile is going to be very strong. It'll also need to be backed up by strong recommendations and so forth. Now, a couple of questions that she's posed. What schools should she be targeting, and should she take the GMAT versus the GRE? She does disclose that she thinks she's going to be a bit stronger on the verbal side than on the quant side. So if that's the case, maybe the GRE would be more appropriate. What we do know is schools, are neutral in terms of, which test you're taking. Between those two, I would say,
Yes.
not necessarily so much with the EA, but between those two. So if she thinks that the GRE is going to represent her better because of her verbal sort of whatever, I think that's very good. So go the route of the GRE. She's got plenty of time, but she should start planning and getting ready for the test now, so that she can take it with plenty of time ahead of her if she needs to retake. So that's important. We know that I don't know if it's a majority, but a good portion of candidates take the test on multiple occasions. We've talked about a candidate, our previous candidate has taken the GMAT 3 times, and so on and so forth, that we covered today. So she also asked what sort of target program should she be targeting. And again, the whole idea, she's first gen, it's a bit of a bootstrapper, done very well at work. If she comes in with a very good sort of test score, then, that opens up the options, I think, for M7/top 16, and a mix of both would be appropriate. I mean, that's the same for everybody, right? Sort of a mix.
Yeah.
All top candidates should spread the risk a little bit. But yeah, again, assuming very strong work profile and so forth. So yeah, she hits that mid 320s on the GRE. I would say that would be appropriate. But the test score will have some impact. So if the test score comes in after a second attempt and it's around the 320, and the 347 GPA is decent, but it's a little bit below average for the top programs. So that's why there's going to be a little bit more emphasis on performance on the test score and so forth. The whole idea of MBA math and HBS score, I was going to bounce this back to you, Graham. She's I forget what you said, finance and economics major.
Yeah.
So what is the added value of MBA math, HBS core in her case versus maybe someone that's coming from an engineering degree or a liberal arts degree, like art history?
Right.
So that sort of makes me wonder a little bit about the added value of those types of opportunities.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go down that path, especially if she has decent marks in all those finance and econ courses that she took as an undergrad, and especially if the GRE or GMAT comes in at a reasonable mark. So, I mean, the thing I also think about is, as you say, like she's got to refine those goals and figure out like what's after I know she's got to return to the consulting firm. She's got to return to Oliver Wyman and do her 3 years to get them to pay for her degree. But then what's beyond that, right? And I think that will help drive, this school selection because she's, as we pointed out, she has, whatever it was, 14 schools on the list. And so it's got to come down to, 5 or 6 or whatever it'll ultimately be. And one of the best ways to do that will be in her figuring out her goals and then figuring out which schools are best suited for that. And by goals, we mean, where does she want to be, in what role, what geography. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that. So she needs to think that through. She has time, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that she's already thinking of this stuff. I did want to mention, Alex, she actually left us a little note in her post where she said, "Love the Clear Admit podcasts and Alex and Graham. I've been listening to them now that I'm starting my MBA process, and they're incredibly motivating and exciting." This might be, Alex, by the way, the first time anyone's ever called our podcast exciting. And she says, "Great work. Thank you for helping out, and I'm looking forward to hearing back." So I just want to thank her for those kind words. It makes it warms the heart. It's really nice to hear, especially since we haven't been getting any mail or reviews on on Apple Podcasts or anything. So good to see that.
But before we wrap this up, you do make a really important point, and I think, the advantage she has is she's planning 2 or 3 years ahead.
Yeah.
But this long-term goal really wants to be fleshed out. She says entrepreneurship, that's fine. But is there a business, is there a niche, is there an industry where they can see themselves making an impact with their entrepreneurship? And how's that related to their prior experiences and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
And if she can really hone in on a long-term goal that she's passionate and believes in, I'm not saying you make it up,
right,
but something that's really something that she can truly get behind, that then enhances, again, the entire narrative and so forth.
Yeah.
So she's got plenty of time. So with that plenty of time, she's got to focus on these long-term goals. She's going to narrow her school selection based off of her goals. She's got a couple of attempts to get the best test score that she can get. And over the next, couple of years, I think she's going to be able to fine tune things so that she really puts herself in a great spot in terms of targeting programs. For us to say exactly now which programs they should be, I don't think is going to be great guidance, Graham.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, it's just one of those things where I'm fine with someone saying they want to be an entrepreneur, but I do also want to see, like you say, some specificity around the idea, particularly if the person has zero kind of entrepreneurial track record.
Yeah.
It's not like this is, she's going to have kind of a consulting background. And so, yeah, I'd want her to say something along the lines of, wow, in my work with the Big Four and now with Oliver Wyman, I've identified A, B, and C that interests me. And I think there's a market opportunity to do, X, Y, and Z, or whatever, right? So, yeah, coming up with that over the next year or two would be really smart for her and would help her narrow down the school list and create compelling essays and things because she'll have a nice set of goals. So, but Alex, I did want to thank you. Thank her for submitting and thank you for picking out her profile for us to discuss. I think this week was really interesting because we got to hear from a non-traditional candidate, someone who's maybe also a little bit overrepresented with a lower test score for the schools that they're targeting. And then obviously this candidate who's a real early bird and demonstrates the value of having a kind of 2-year runway here to get everything in order. So very good stuff. Thanks for picking these out.
Yeah, I'm just going to qualify that second profile. I'm not sure that the test score is lower for the schools they're targeting. I think my point is more they could be targeting a little bit higher schools.
Yes.
If the test score was just a little bit above, so that taking that GRE, that might be the answer to that issue. But I do think they're well within range of the programs they're targeting.
Yeah, fair points, definitely. So, thanks again, Alex, for picking these out. I guess we'll do it all again next week. And I'll see you in 1 week's time.
Very good. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.